Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, and welcome to this week's episode of Phone Dog Live. As you can see, we have a special guest this time. This is Lisa Gade from the Mobile Tech Review. She's going to join me, and we're going to be talking about Windows Phone, a couple of the issues that people are having, and then I thought if we have time, I wanted to talk about this whole update scandal. So first of all, thanks Lisa for being on the show. If you want to tell the guys a little bit about yourself and your prior history, what you've been doing.
My crimes of infamy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm editor-in-chief of MobileTechReview.com, and I also founded this site more than 10 years ago, believe it or not. And we started out ages ago just covering PDAs, then smartphones, and now we do notebooks, ultra-portables, iOS stuff, iPod, iPad, you name it. And we have a channel on YouTube as well. It's youtube.com, Mobile Tech Review.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't seen the videos, they're some of the best reviews that I've seen, and I use them a lot for a format, formats that when I do reviews in terms of the terminology and being helpful and explaining things. So definitely watch her videos because she does some awesome reviews. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Guys on Ustream, feel free to join the conversation. Obviously, we're not going to talk to you, but you can have your own little chat. And if you are on YouTube, watching the recording of this, there's a timeline in the description so you can jump around and see what topics you want to listen to. But I wanted to get started with this, with Windows Phone. I wrote an article about how Windows Phone kind of deserves a free pass, at least, and this was my reasoning, at least as long as we give Android and iOS a free pass, because, and Lisa, we talked about how you agree with this. To me, it seems like people expect Windows Phone to be almost perfect. Like they mention its flaws, like the scrolling problem that I've heard of. The hardware isn't quite as good as some Android phones. The app selection, which are some definite faults, but Android has its own faults. iOS has its own faults, and I just felt like it wasn't really fair to kind of throw its faults in its face, in the faces of consumers, when Android and iOS, they've got plenty of imperfections too. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. There's two ways of looking at it. You can look at it just from a pure consumer standpoint. They walk into the store, they want something that works and does the things they want right now. They don't care about the history, about the company so much. They just say, I want to do these 5 things. If it does it, it's a good phone for me. If not, well, forget about that. So from that standpoint, you could be a little bit hard on Windows Phone because it might be lacking some of those things. But I think that they've recently added some really important stuff like LTE. Everybody wants fast data these days. That's a must-have. It was something I had to have. I love Windows Phone. I wouldn't use one every day until it had LTE. So now we've got that, for example. But on the other hand, a great operating system, use the cliche, it isn't built in a day. Look at iOS. For the first year, there were no third-party apps, right? Every day you turn on your phone and it was really new, nifty, barren, everything else, but you saw whatever it was, those 10 apps. Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. When the T-Mobile G1 came out, the first Android phone, my God, all sorts of things were lacking. So this is going to happen. And everybody thinks, well, Microsoft, they're monolithic, huge company. They're the umbrella corporation. They should have enough staff to throw at this to make anything happen. But in truth, development is done by small teams of people, and they can only organically add on so many features. So you got to say, if there's a really good starting point, you do have to cut them some slack. And I think they do have a really good starting point here for something that actually has a fresh UI. Microsoft used to have the reputation for stealing other people's ideas and stuff. This time they didn't.
Yeah.
It's fresh, it's compelling, it works well, it's really fast, So I would cut them some slack. There's a lot of good stuff there right now to make it a very usable platform.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was actually surprised by, and I don't know how I missed this or forgot, they harp on how it doesn't have native turn-by-turn navigation, which it doesn't really. It'll give you the directions and you'll have a list and it will actually speak them to you, but it's not automatic. You're going to have to manually scroll through in order for it to speak it to you. So that's definitely a feature that a lot of people would like to have, and I agree with that. But iOS does not have native turn-by-turn navigation either, and I was astounded whenever I realized this, because I'm just like, wait just a minute. There's no way that all of these bloggers are giving Windows Phone a hard time for this one admittedly huge feature when iOS, the savior operating system, doesn't have it either. Now they have third-party applications just like Windows Phone has, and
Right.
Nokia phones obviously have that advantage, but that it doesn't have that, not to mention other things like multitasking. The multitasking interface on iOS is neither perfect or really true multitasking when you get right down to it. It's no more or no less flawed than Windows Phone. I just couldn't believe, after thinking about it and going through this whole list, how many faults these other OSs have. Not to mention, people hate it whenever I bring this up, but it's one of the, so I'm not like constantly talking about iOS's faults, but Android fragmentation is kind of an issue. I mean, I don't know, do you see that as an issue?
I think it's something that the press loves to jump on, and then they get consumers all riled up. I think everyday people, they have no idea what version of Android is on their phone.
True.
And that's the platform that's accused of fragmentation. And I think that because we examine everything so closely and we're the experts on it, we see every little change as being like, woohoo, this is something new, right? But really, a lot of the changes are subtle. Even if I'm looking at something like Ice Cream Sandwich, which is supposed to be the big new jump ahead for Android, the changes are awfully subtle, especially after manufacturers are done with their little customizations that kind of give you that continuity. Sense still looks like Sense. TouchWiz is still looking like TouchWiz. So I don't think fragmentation is really that horrible a problem.
That's interesting, because it's kind of, because I talk about fragmentation all the time, and of course people use it to, they think that I'm anti-Android, which I'm really not, because I use an Android phone. But anyway, so it's kind of interesting to talk to another blogger that doesn't feel like fragmentation is a problem, because obviously sometimes Android fans, obviously they're going to kind of lean towards Android being, more perfect. But yeah, I mean, the thing with updates, to me, there's new features in terms of performance, and a couple of new features that are actually really helpful. For example, being able to move apps to your to an external SD card, which I think is actually very helpful. Also, even if it is just a UI change, I mean, that's kind of a big deal, considering previous versions of Android are not the best looking. But regardless, I mean, all of that aside, I don't want to get into a whole fragmentation thing, but to me, that was just one other thing that Android kind of could work on, but for some reason, people ignore that whenever they talk about the faults that Windows Phone has. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if these could really harm Windows Phone, or if it's something that, maybe it's that people just kind of jump on because they need to find something to talk about or something that's wrong with it. But I definitely, like you said, I mean, it's just starting out.
Yeah.
Of course,
And so far, there isn't much fragmentation. Microsoft has tried to, it seems to me, follow Apple's model of getting OS upgrades out there to as many devices as possible. So right now, we're all looking at pretty much Mango devices at this point, even if it started out life with the original operating system. I know I had an old HD7 that I brought all the way up to Mango, and I think we don't really know yet what's going to happen with Windows 8 Apollo. We see rumors on both ends, and people speaking on behalf of Microsoft who say one thing or another. Until Microsoft says officially what's going on with Apollo, I really hate to conjecture and, get people all up in arms. I won't get it, or I will get it, or, we have to wait to see. Sometimes it's just like with the iPhone, sometimes there are hardware requirements for the new versions of the operating system to offer powerful new features, and if the hardware isn't up to it, it's not up to it. You can't keep supporting a device forever either. But I certainly think for at least a year you should be able to, and so far I thought Microsoft's actually done a pretty good job anyway with that.
Yeah, but which is actually a great segue into the other topic of this whole back and forth of if current Windows Phone handsets will get Apollo or if they won't get Apollo. Have you heard the latest, how the original Microsoft evangelist retracted his statement? He originally was the first one that said that all of these current phones would get Apollo. Then The Verge came out saying, no, our sources say that they're not going to. And of course, people jumped on The Verge for that. You're just anti-Windows Phone because it's not their fault, but it
They're
just
doing
seems
too
like,
well lately with the Windows Phone crowd there.
yeah, it just seems like every time there's news about Windows Phone, it just happens to be negative, and so they publish it, and I feel bad for them. Of course, we'd probably get the same thing when we publish those articles, but anyway, so that original evangelist came out, I think this morning or something, and said that he wasn't talking about phones getting software
And
updates.
apps,
Yeah,
right?
he was talking about the apps, how they would be compatible
Mm-hmm.
with Apollo, which is kind of, I can't tell if that's actually what he meant or if he's just covering his tail, which he
No.
probably
Yeah.
is. I have a feeling that Microsoft talked to him. So, but it's interesting. I asked this question on Twitter actually a couple of minutes ago because I happened to be reading some of the comments for that article about how now all of a sudden the phones won't be getting these updates, and people were saying that they would actually go back to Android if their Windows Phone device did not get Apollo.
So they can get even more fragmented. Yeah.
So I'm just like, wait a minute. I mean, obviously, if you want to go back to Android, like that's totally okay because to each his own. No OS is perfect. You got to find what you like, and I would be completely okay with that. But it's just like, if you want to get updates, I mean, Android is probably the worst OS to go with. Of course, our readers probably are the type to hack and install custom ROMs so where they can get ice cream sandwich, like, well,
I
right
did that
now.
with my Samsung Galaxy Skyrocket. There was the leaked
Yeah.
beta ROM of ICS from Samsung, and it works great because, my God, I've had my phone since last October. I'm still waiting for ice cream sandwich.
Yeah.
I can't take this any longer, you know.
And and that's one thing, that I kind of forget about when I do talk about Android updates is that, you can hack and install custom ROM and install an unofficial update, which is still, at least you have the option. It's not like you're just completely, because as far as we know with this Apollo update, I don't know if the development community or the hacking community is going to be able to get that software and make it available for unlocked Windows Phone devices. Right now, there's not really any reason to hack your Windows Phone device. Because I use Windows Phone, and I've gone on XDA developers to see, I wonder if I could hack this and do some sort of customization. You really can't. It's really, you can't really do anything. So, but I just thought that was so funny that people actually talked about switching back to Android or iOS. But I don't know. Like
People get emotional and they get mad. I mean, look, I have my nice new Cyan Lumia here.
Yeah.
This is the flagship device. This is out not so long before Apollo. I personally would be really peeved if I don't get Apollo on this. It's supposed to be the best out there, and
Yeah, and that's what I mean with the phones that are new, like with phones like the HG7. Sorry, this earbud is like not cooperating or staying in my ear. But with older phones like the HG7 or maybe the Lumia 710 or 610, I can understand if those don't get the update. But with phones like the Lumia 900, I would kind of, oh my gosh, it's just not going to stay in. I have really tiny ears, which is probably why.
I have the same problem. That's why I'm not wearing a headset. I'm relying on my built-in mic on my Mac.
With the audio setup I have to use earbuds with Ustream and Skype and everything. But I have incredibly small ears, and so anytime I buy headphones, I have to buy the ones that have the alternate ear tips because I have to use the tiniest one.
Me too. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, as far as right now, we don't know what phones will get it, if none of them will. Right. I think I can sort of understand if current phones don't get it because apparently Apollo, it's going to be a complete overhaul. They're going to go right down to the kernel and change everything. So in reality, I guess current phones wouldn't be able to handle that, which kind of does make sense.
It's hard to say. I mean, if they have a dual core requirement, for example, then obviously, well, you're on the outs if you don't have a dual core, but,
Yeah. It's, we'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, that's Windows Phone, and I do hope that it does well. Yeah, and I've talked about reasons why I hope it does well. One, because I use it and I really enjoy it, but also it's just good to have choices. I mean, not everybody
Yes.
likes
Right.
Android or iOS. That was one of the reasons why I loved WebOS, because it was
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
And
And WebOS was just lovely to use too. It was such a
yeah,
great UI.
yeah,
But
and
well,
it's kind of actually has the same problem that Windows Phone has, is that it's great software but kind of not great hardware, which is kind of a big deal. But I don't know. We'll have to see. But thanks for joining the show. Thanks
sure.
for joining
My
for the
pleasure.
chat, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe we can have you back on sometime.
Be happy to.
All right, cool.
All
Thanks.
right.
I'll talk to you later. Oh, you're on Twitter, by the way.
That's right. I'm Lisa Gade on Twitter.
Okay, yeah, guys, follow her, and like I said, the channel to Mobile Tech Review. They've got great reviews. But anyway, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye. All right, thanks guys or thanks Lisa for joining the show. Sorry my earbud kept falling out. I know that was probably incredibly annoying and distracting. But thanks Lisa for being on the show. And with Windows Phone again, we'll just have to wait and see. But it's kind of been some drama for a while. It was all good news. They had the Lumia 900 coming out, and it was a great phone, and bloggers were talking about how they just loved it and they wanted to switch to it. But then ever since then, the sales in Europe haven't been excellent. Nokia has said sales in the US have been great, but sales in Europe have been sort of shaky. And then we've got this, all this drama with, will Windows, current Windows Phone get the Apollo update, or will they not get the update? I'm not really sure. No one's really sure at this point except for Microsoft. I did think it was funny though that some people were talking about switching back to Android because of the update issue. I was just like, I don't really know if switching to Android would actually solve that problem. But anyway, thanks Lisa for being on the show, and we're gonna move on now to what other big news? Oh yeah, right, Galaxy S3. Duh, big news. We finally got the invitation to the event. It will be on May 3rd in London. But even more exciting than that, there was a video that it was a Galaxy S3. It was not the phone. We're guessing all of the internals and stuff have been put into sort of a incognito shell. So the video with the phone is not actually the phone that you're going to see whenever it's officially announced. We're guessing this is just kind of like a temporary shell. But the phone itself, the hardware and everything inside is still what the Galaxy S3 will be, at least according to the website that got their hands on this device. And the specs are a little bit different from what we had previously heard. I went back and looked at the original specs that we were given. We originally heard that it would have a 4.8-inch 1080p display, Super AMOLED Plus HD. So basically, an out-of-this-world amazing display. This video kind of takes it down a notch. It says it's going to be a 4.6-inch 1280 by 720 Super AMOLED display. So still an HD display, but a 720 display, not quite a 1080p display. And it was Super AMOLED, which is kind of interesting that they decided to go with Super AMOLED instead of Super AMOLED Plus. I don't know if that has something to do with the display, the size, or the resolution. Maybe I don't know, for some reason, I just thought that was kind of surprising. Kind of the same thing, with the Galaxy Nexus. HD resolution, large display, Super AMOLED, but not Super AMOLED Plus. And now obviously Super AMOLED is still a great display. Like, there's nothing to complain about. But I'm like, why not just throw in a Super AMOLED Plus? I don't know. But, and now with the Galaxy S3, this is, really kind of an even bigger deal than the Galaxy Nexus, and still no Super AMOLED Plus, just Super AMOLED. But anyway, so 4.6-inch, 1280 by 720, and now we're hearing that it will have a 1.4 gigahertz quad-core processor. A little bit different. Originally, we'd heard it would have a 1.5 gigahertz quad-core processor, so not that big of a difference, but 1.4 gigahertz, a gig of RAM, 16 gigabytes of internal memory, an 8 megapixel camera, which is still the same from what we originally heard, which is not surprising. I think, these days it's either 8 megapixels or 5 megapixels, and the high-end super phones usually have 8 megapixels. So that one was a pretty easy one to guess. Obviously, ice cream sandwich with TouchWiz. Now, we originally heard that it would have great battery life, and this was by a person, this had been, I don't know, a month ago, maybe a couple of months ago, person who had gotten hands-on time with the phone, and he said it had great battery life. He didn't know what size the battery was, but he just said it was excellent battery life. Well, now this new leaked video, they're saying that it will have a 2050 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty good size. You know, if you think a lot of phones these days come out with 1800 milliamp hour, 2050, it's pretty good. It's not quite, 3300 like we have in the Droid Razr Max, but still a pretty good sized battery. So those are some updated specs. It still sounds like an awesome phone, and of course with the Galaxy S3, I mean, there's no question it is going to be an awesome phone, and that's one of the things that you can really anticipate with the Galaxy phones, that they're always going to be great. The original Galaxy was one of the best phones of the year. The Galaxy S2, again, one of the best phones of the year, and so with the Galaxy S3, it's easy to say it's going to be an awesome phone, which is good. If you're a consumer and you follow blogs and there's a million phones that come out every month and you're like, wow, this phone is great, or this phone is awesome, or should I get this one, or should I get this one? You never really know, but that's one of the things with the Galaxy S phones. You always know they're going to be great. So now if they can only get the updates out faster, which is, that's just Samsung. Or maybe it's the carriers. I'm starting to think that it's more the carriers, which is what most people think, but then they kind of like shift the blame everywhere. So I think it is just the carriers. So anyway, but that's Galaxy S3 May 3rd, which is coming up in about 2 weeks. About 2 weeks, so not that far away. That's exciting. Next, the death of the physical keyboard. This is something, I had a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about today, but I read this article, and so I decided to kind of scratch everything else and kind of talk about this because, you guys know I love physical keyboards. I've talked about this before. It's just something about having the actual keys. And I don't have a problem typing on a virtual keyboard as long as it's a good keyboard, obviously. But for the most part, I can type on a virtual keyboard with very few problems. But just something about having the actual physical keys, it's just makes me feel more secure, because with a virtual keyboard, I have to trust that the device is going to, feel or register my my thumb or my finger on the right key, and that's all on the phone. I have no control over it, so I'm just hoping that it registers it in the right place. Whereas with a physical keyboard, I know I'm pushing the K or I'm pushing the M, and so I feel more secure with it. But sad news for people like me, at least for HTC fans, they will no longer be making phones with a physical keyboard. And this is, it's not that much of a shocker because, let's face it, there's not a lot of phones out with physical keyboards anyway. I mean, even when HTC, before this announcement, it's not like HTC made that many phones with physical keyboards, but at least it was, it was going to be an option. But now apparently it will no longer be an option, and I don't know, we don't know if this is 100% every single phone they make from now on will not have a physical keyboard. I don't know, but it seems like they're really going to start moving away from that. Because according to Bjorn Kilburn, HTC Vice President of Product Strategy, he says that consumers like thin phones. The way it looks, how thin it is, that's really the most important thing to them. Things like battery life, a physical keyboard, those things aren't as important. Now, people do want great battery life. I think, that's something that we talk about all the time. I, read comments about it. People do want great battery life, and there are some people who like having a physical keyboard, but for the most part, he said people just really want a thin device, and so I thought this was interesting. It was because of this, when they did these surveys, it was because of this research that HTC decided to shelve its plans for phones with batteries ranging from 3,000 milliampere hours and up. So apparently HTC was planning on making a phone kind of like the Droid Razr Max that had a huge battery, and obviously it was going to add some thickness, and so they, maybe did some research or some surveys and found that, people would rather have a really thin phone instead of a phone with a better battery. So it's kind of a, bittersweet moment, because on the one hand, you knew that at least HTC was like, you read the news and you're like, oh, they were going to make a phone with a giant battery, but they're not actually going to do that anymore. So, kind of disappointing, but to me, I do love physical keyboards, and it's a sad day. No more physical keyboards. But you do still have, that's just HTC. I'm sure Samsung or Motorola, has a Droid 4, which is a flagship phone, and it has a physical keyboard. And the physical keyboard is actually its trademark. So, here's hoping that, hopefully Motorola will keep that one going, and we'll still have phones with a physical keyboard. But I know there's a lot of people that love them. I love them. That's one of the things I'm very, very picky about. Anytime, and this was something I would get, people would complain about it so much. If I would do a review on a phone that had a QWERTY keyboard, I would spend so much time on it, and I would analyze it, and I would be so picky about it. And people in the comments, they would rag on me so much, saying I was so picky. And I'm just like, hey, physical keyboards, this is serious, okay? I mean, this keyboards on phones, it's not just, you can't just throw a keyboard on there and be like, oh, it's got a physical keyboard, it's great. No. There are some very specific design elements that it has to have or not have in order for it to be a good physical keyboard. And I was extremely picky with physical keyboards. And so I am, now at least you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about me, examining it to death. But anyway, no more physical keyboards for HTC phones, at least. I do want to move on and talk about this T-Mobile's new marketing campaign, which actually isn't, it's kind of weird because they've debuted this new commercial, this alter ego ad is what they're calling it, and it's pretty hot actually. But anyway, but they're debuting this new commercial, but then they said that their brand relaunch is actually going to take place this fall. So I'm not really sure if this marketing campaign is actually the campaign or if it's just the build-up to the campaign that's going to happen in 4 months. I don't know. It's sort of confusing. But if you haven't seen the ad, it's pretty cool. It's, Carly, the T-Mobile girl. She's first of all at her very posh apartment. It's like, I'm like, whoa, I would like to have that apartment. I mean, obviously it's probably not her real apartment, but it's modern, and she's got like the glass walls. You can see an awesome view of the skyline. I don't know where they are, what city they're in, but awesome view of the city skyline. And she's got this super cool closet. And this is like, has nothing to do with the commercial at all, but I'm going to talk about it. This super cool closet that's just, it's a square in the middle of her, loft apartment. And then it slides open. You can just slide it completely open, and you've got two sides with, with the rails. She hangs all of her dresses and stuff, and the floor is lit up. It's totally, the closet is awesome. I mean, that was the first thing I noticed. Closet is awesome. Anyway, but the commercial is, she goes to her closet, she's looking at the pink dresses, and she's kind of like getting tired of them, and so she goes over and puts on this really tight leather motorcycle riding outfit, whatever you call those. It's a motorcycle riding outfit. That's what it's called. Anyway, and gets on her motorcycle, and drives off. It's a Ducati motorcycle. And so according to Peter DeLuca, who is T-Mobile senior vice president, says that the motorcycle is a metaphor to symbolize the speed and capabilities of Magenta's, of T-Mobile's HSPA Plus 4G network. And then the ad itself is also a metaphor for T-Mobile challenging the status quo. So this is a very deep commercial. Don't watch this and just see Carly with the freaking hot leather tight outfit thinking that this is all just, sex sells. It's not about that at all, okay? This is art, okay? This is deep stuff here, okay? The motorcycle is not just a cool motorcycle, okay? Try to be a little more serious. This is a metaphor for challenging the status quo. And the motorcycle itself is a symbol also. So it's deep. This is some deep stuff that we're talking about. T-Mobile has also launched a new website. It's a test drive website. I've been doing quotation marks a lot today. I don't know. They fit. There's been times when I've needed quotation marks. I don't know. It's just been a lot. They've also launched a new website, Test Drive, that will allow customers to try out T-Mobile's network and compare its speeds with those of other carriers in the market, which is totally useless. I mean, just absolutely pointless. Like, the website, however much money it took, it's like $1 million down the drain. Because let me tell you something about these test drive websites. If it's anybody, when T-Mobile does this, or when Sprint, when they had those commercials about how, anytime anyone talks about how their data speeds are faster, it's like, yeah, of course you're going to say that. And like this website, you can go there and they have videos. It's for Sprints. They compare it to Sprint, Verizon, and AT&T. And they say, who can load a Netflix video faster? T-Mobile's 4G phone or AT&T's iPhone or Sprint's? It's always the iPhone, in case you noticed that. So this is a direct target of, we don't have the iPhone, but we're faster. Anyway, so who can load the Netflix video faster? And of course, T-Mobile always wins. I think it's 3 times faster than Verizon, 4 times faster than Sprint, and just faster than AT&T. They didn't say how much faster. It was just faster. It always loads it faster. And I'm just like, I mean, come on, okay? Like, I'm gonna believe you. Now, I mean, I don't doubt that if you look at the numbers, T-Mobile's 42 megabits per second HSPA Plus network is obviously going to be, in just straight up hypothetical numbers, is going to be faster than AT&T's LTE network, which has theoretical highs of 21 megabits per second. So obviously, yeah, theoretically it is faster, but a lot of that has to do with real world speeds, connection coverage in your area, and sometimes it's not always faster. But just beside the point, it's like if I were a customer and I wanted to see whose speeds are faster, T-Mobile or AT&T, I'm not going to go to their website because obviously T-Mobile is going to say they're faster and AT&T is going to say they're faster. It's like the most pointless website ever. This test drive website it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. But the commercial itself is pretty cool. I mean, it's not like, when we saw the whole teaser clip and it was this whole build up and it was kind of exciting, and then now we see the commercial, it's not really, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, because, like I said, the whole point of it is to lead to setting the record straight. I did it again. I did the quotations. Okay, but they fit. It's a quote. Anyway, it's this whole build up for setting the record straight, and we're faster. And so go to our test drive website. So the build up is like building up to the wrong thing, because setting the record straight kind of gives the connotation that you're going to give facts, kind of gives that impression that you're going to present facts here, and it's going to be facts that no one's ever heard before. Like, this is a huge campaign. We're gonna set the record straight. This is stuff that you've never heard before. We're challenging the status quo. When in reality, you just set up a bogus website that tells everyone that you're faster than every other carrier, which is nothing new. We've heard that a million times in your commercials. So the commercial's good, but it's not quite as groundbreaking, I think, as it should be. Not only that, but I liked the other commercials. I liked Carly in the pink dress. I thought that was really cool. And I don't know, maybe they felt like they were being too, sugary and too nice, but I don't know. I felt like it got the point across. It was different. Verizon has their commercials and AT&T had their commercials, and T-Mobile was white background, Carly in a pink dress. And that was like T-Mobile. And people paid attention to her because she's hot. And so they didn't care what she was saying. They would just watch. And then you put the big numbers up there. We got unlimited data and unlimited minutes for $50 a month. And you're like, whoa, that's a big deal. So I thought they were great commercials, but I don't know. Maybe, like I said, the real ad campaign doesn't really start until this fall. So who knows what that's going to be. But it's cool, but at the same time sort of disappointing. T-Mobile news. Let's see what else. What else is on the menu? There was the Galaxy S3. I already talked about that. No more physical keyboards. Apple and Samsung are apparently going to try to bury the axe and be friends again. They're going to try to settle all of their patent disputes, and this is kind of a big deal. And I think it's not entirely surprising. First, just to recap, everyone knows about the patent disputes. Apple sued basically everybody. I think it was safe to say that they sued pretty much everyone. And then everyone basically sued them back because they were like, WTF, Apple? I mean, what the heck? And so it was just this huge battle between everybody. Apple and Motorola, Apple and HTC, Apple and Samsung. It was just everyone. But I think the Samsung one was kind of a big deal because in some respects, a lot of people felt like Apple actually had a case because TouchWiz, even before this patent battle, when when we first saw it, a lot of people were like, hey, that looks exactly like iOS. In some areas, and I've talked about this before, how I feel about it. In some areas, it did kind of look like iOS. So, there was and whereas Moto Blur didn't really look like iOS. It looked just like, crap, basically. HTC Sense doesn't really look like iOS. So they kind of had a bigger case or a more stronger case, but also because Samsung provides a lot of parts. I almost said a lot of hearts. Provides them with hearts. No, provides a lot of parts for Apple for the iPhone, and so it was like, wow. I mean, if Apple has the guts to go after Samsung, I mean, wow, this is kind of huge. And so we were all watching it closely, but I think a lot of people felt like it would end in settlement just because that's the way a lot of cases do end. Nothing ever really, judges have it easy. They got it so easy. All they have to do is listen to the arguments and just be like, so would you like to settle this, or do you want to continue with a trial? And they'll be like, you know what, let's just try to settle it. And she was thinking, yes, because that case would have been huge and freaking difficult. I mean, can you imagine the precedent it would have set? I mean, it was a huge case, and she probably like got on her knees and thanked God that night because she was just like, thank you so much for not making me have to do this. Anyway, she got off easy, basically. And so they decided that they're going to at least try to settle it out of court. Now, we don't know if they actually are going to, get a settlement, if they will find a resolution, but at least they're going to try to. And this is, whenever the news first broke, I did a piece kind of examining Apple's case of the patents, and basically, did Apple have a case? I mean, was there any chance that they were going to win this? And I interviewed a intellectual property lawyer and talked to him about it, and basically what he thought. And it's on Phone Dog if you want to read it. And he said back then, basically that it probably will settle out of court. He said they would probably end up licensing it, or finding some other way to find a resolution without having to pay millions of dollars on each side. And I thought it was interesting. He mentioned in the interview, and I have this in the article, he said if Steve Jobs were still alive, they probably would not reach a settlement. I mean, they probably would have to go all the way through the courts. The judge would have to make a decision because Steve Jobs, was more passionate about it. He created Apple, so obviously this is personal for him. But he said because Steve Jobs isn't here, and because people that are now running Apple may be less passionate, not that they're not running it properly, but just they didn't start the company with blood, sweat, and tears. So they'd be a little less passionate. And he said because of that, it probably will settle out of court. And at the time, I thought it was really interesting. I was like, he's got a point, but at the same time, I don't really know. I mean, Apple is pretty hardcore on these lawsuits, but it turned out to be right. And so I kind of wonder, would if Steve Jobs were alive, if Steve Jobs were running the company, would it have come to being able to settle it out of court, or would he want to continue on regardless of what Samsung wanted? It's kind of one of those things. Obviously, we'll never know. But it would have been interesting to see how this would play out with Steve Jobs at the helm instead of the people that are running the company now. But, there's a 90-day deadline for the talks to take place. And so, for them to meet and then find a resolution probably will end in licensing or, maybe just meeting some sort of agreement. And I'll let you do this if you let me do this or something like that. So... but we'll keep you guys updated on that one. But that's the news. That's the news for this week. And we can move on now to an open Q&A. You guys can feel free to ask me any questions. You can ask questions about the news. If there was something that you wanted to know while I was talking about it and I just missed your question, feel free to ask it again. I'm on Ustream. I'm on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can also... leave your comment there, and I read those comments, and I'll try to answer them if I can. And okay, just bear with me. Okay, here we go. Ustream. I'm still learning my way around Facebook with its new. Why would I want to install the update now? I mean, right now, you're gonna tell me there's an update. Whatever. Go away. Remind me later. Okay. So yeah, I'm on Facebook. Did I miss anything about the Galaxy S3? Yes, you did. I spent about 10 minutes talking about it. I'm not going to talk about it again just because, like I said, it was 10 minutes. But you can watch the recording of it. I'll have it up on YouTube so you can see what we talked about. Let's see. On Ustream. Can you answer this? I know Motorola split and became Motorola and Motorola Mobility. I know what Motorola Mobility does, but what does Motorola do? Well, Motorola had other devices, or other hardware, I should say, not devices, but other hardware, other products, we'll say that, other products besides phones or tablets. And so the Motorola Mobility will take care of phones and tablets. Motorola will handle everything else that they were doing, which is why they split. It's actually kind of a good idea. Keep it a lot simpler. Do you like Motorola? I've never really enjoyed Motorola's phones. And this goes all the way back to the Razr, the original Razr. I've just never really liked their hardware. I don't know, it's always been too industrial for me. I've used that word before to describe them. Very industrial, very, with hard edges and big and blocky. And I've never really liked that. And then Moto Blur, I detest. It is just horrid. And so, the people at Motorola, I mean, I don't know them. There's nothing personal against Motorola. It's just, I've never really liked their hardware. Sydney, have you ever had surgery? No, I don't think I've ever had surgery. I broke my arm once when I was, 6 or 7. I was in first grade, so I was probably 7. I was trying to fly. It's a true story. I was, you hear these stories or, see movies where kids try to fly and you're like, what idiot kid would try to fly? I was one of those idiot kids that tried to fly. And it did not, I mean, it worked for like a second, but not really long enough to brag about. Sydney, now that T-Mobile will be in line spectrum-wise, I think they'll something about the newest iPhone and turn on LTE next year on it, HSPA Plus until then. Your thoughts? Yes, I agree with that. In terms of T-Mobile getting the new iPhone, obviously, yes, you're right. Now that they're going to be refarming their spectrum, they definitely will be able to carry the new iPhone. And I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who it was. I was talking to somebody about this whole thing of T-Mobile getting the new iPhone and basically why they haven't gotten it yet. And some people think it's a conspiracy. I did it again. I did the quotations again. Okay, some people think it's a conspiracy that Steve Jobs had something against the people at Deutsche Telekom, which is T-Mobile's parent company, because apparently there was some sort of rift or falling out they had, and so I've always thought that that was why T-Mobile didn't get the iPhone, because of that. But I was talking to this guy. I wish I knew who it was. It was probably somebody really important that I should totally remember, but I don't, because I'm just an idiot like that sometimes. But anyway, and he said it's actually probably not so much that a conspiracy. It really is just that T-Mobile uses different 3G bands, and Apple is probably just a lot of trouble to create a new phone just for T-Mobile's spectrum. Because, if you think about the AT&T iPhone, it's really pretty much an international iPhone, and they kind of just like change up a couple of things, but it's still, they don't really have to create an entirely new phone just for AT&T, whereas with T-Mobile, they would. Now, you're thinking, well, Sprint, they created a CDMA version, so I don't know, maybe it was easier to do that, but I thought that was kind of an interesting point. So maybe T-Mobile will get the new iPhone. Maybe it's not as, a lost hope, as much of a lost hope as people thought it would be. And turning on LTE next year, I do believe those are their plans, but I don't think it's going to be as soon as people think. But we'll have to see. Okay, I missed like a million questions while I was rambling on about that. My dad works for Motorola and can say, get ready for a new phone soon. Awesome. Sydney, do you prefer a slim phone with a small battery or a thicker phone with a bigger battery? I do. I'm big on hardware, and so I like a thin phone. Obviously, I don't want it to have horrible battery, so I don't want like a super thin phone with terrible battery life. But as long as it's, a reasonable battery size, say 1800 milliamp hour, reasonable size, but still thin, I would go more for the thin than something like the Droid Razr Max, which is kind of thicker with a larger battery. Sydney, how about that triple overtime? I know, that was a tough one. He's talking about the Utah Jazz Dallas Mavericks game. I'm a big NBA fan, and I live in Dallas, so obviously I'm a Mavericks fan. And yeah, recently Mavericks and Jazz went to triple overtime, and it was crazy. I mean, it's been like this all season long. These teams just make these crazy, ridiculous shots that they would not make, but they're just so determined to win that these shots go in. I mean, it's happened so much. Buzzer beaters, OKC, the Clippers, the Lakers. I mean, in the overtime game against the Lakers, in the game before the Utah game, Pau Gasol hit 2 threes. Pau Gasol's shot like 5 threes the entire season, and in this game he makes two. It's like these crazy. The same thing happens with these lottery teams. They're so determined to beat the Mavericks that they make these crazy shots. Anyway, but it's I'm okay with it. I'm not trying to make excuses. It's just it's funny to watch, and it's kind of fun too because it makes it more competitive. But yeah, I know I'm a big Mavericks fan. But I'm like a lot of Mavericks fans are kind of unreasonable, and I think this year they're kind of like bragging too much and talking about how they're going to repeat, win the championship again. I mean, I really don't think they're going to do that. I'm happy with the championship they got last year, but it's still fun to watch, even if they don't win. It's still been a good season. I'm just glad I've been able to watch them. But anyway, back to technology. Sydney, will T-Mobile be getting a new Windows phone anytime soon? Oh, you know what? I can check. I was about to stare off and try to think about it, but I can check my cheat sheet. Let's see. Oh, and you're gonna pop up over there, aren't you? Oh no, you're not. You're gonna pop up over here. Okay, good. T-Mobile. Let's see. We've got the 1S coming. Let's see. I don't have any new Windows Phone devices for T-Mobile. Last one we saw was a Lumia 710, so we'll have to wait and see. Hey Sydney, it's Nashawn. What does Apple want to change about TouchWiz? What patents are they filing against? Well, a lot of their patents, it's actually not patents in terms, it's trade dress. And what Apple is claiming is that T-Mobile used design elements from the iPhone in order to confuse consumers into thinking that they were buying an Apple product. So things like the icons looking similar, the packaging looking similar. They're saying that Samsung intentionally used those design elements, to make people think it was an Apple product. Now, that's a very difficult, case to make because, first of all, you have to prove that people associate those design elements with Apple in the first place. Otherwise, you have no case. And second of all, you have to prove that, that's the reason why and then you have to prove, were people actually confused? Did people actually think that the Galaxy S was an Apple product? But that's the claim that Apple made, and I don't know. And we talked about it. I had a whole show on it, back months ago, whenever that happened, and to a certain extent, I felt like Apple might have a case, but I just didn't really think that the average consumer is not a tech geek. They don't know a lot about technology. Even then, any person off the street, you show them a Galaxy S, you show them an iPhone, they're going to know they're by two different companies. It's bottom line. So anyway, the Bulls are better. Well, clearly they have a better record. I would agree with that. And I've said before, I trash talk the Bulls a lot because I'm a Mavericks fan. I trash talk Derrick Rose a lot. For all you Derrick Rose fans, by the way, I will have you know that first of all, I think Rondo is a better point guard than Derrick Rose. Rondo is a better passer and a better rebounder and a better shooter. Now, obviously, Derrick Rose averages 30 points a game and Rondo averages 12 points a game. But he has a better shooting percentage. So for all this crap that people talk about how Rondo, he ain't got no jump shot and all that crap, Rondo actually has a better shooting percentage than Derrick Rose. And he's a better rebounder, which surprised me. And he, gets more assists, obviously, because he's a better point guard and he's a true point guard. But anyway, all of that being said, I think the Bulls might actually be good enough to win the championship this year because I think they're all defense. And that was a problem they had last year. They were all defense. They didn't have enough offense. So they could defend like crazy, but they couldn't make a shot. And so this year, I think they have just enough offense to get by. I think their defense is still spectacular. I think they have just enough offense to beat teams. And so, in the playoffs, obviously regular season they dominate, but the playoffs are a different game. Anyway, and so I think they might actually be able to win the championship this year. So I'm kind of interesting waiting to see that. What a ridiculous claim. Oh, are you talking about Apple? Or were you talking about me with Derrick Rose? I don't know. An updated 900 is rumored for T-Mobile in June. That's true. That's kind of a slight rumor that we've heard. Nothing really solid on it. It's just a very small sort of shady rumor. But yeah, we have heard that the Lumia 900 will come to T-Mobile with a couple of different what am I trying to think? Upgrades. Do you think the AT&T Galaxy S2 Skyrocket HD will even come out? It was so funny. We heard about that, and then, I don't know what happened to it. It just kind of disappeared into oblivion. So, I don't know. Did we have a solid release date for that? Let me see. Samsung Galaxy S2. Yeah, I don't know. Joakim Noah is the best player on the team. Are you kidding me? Okay. Choose to watch ad in the middle of basketball talk. Gets done almost a minute later, still talking about basketball. I'm sorry. I love basketball and it keeps coming up. I don't know. I'm sorry. Sydney, what are your thoughts on the new Pebble smartwatch? I think it's awesome. The whole smartwatch thing, it's pretty cool. I don't know if I would spend $200 on it, but if you got money to blow, you buy anything. But I think it looks pretty cool. And I think for me, the biggest thing is, functionality. Does it do enough? Yeah, it, shows a time, alarm. If I can load my music onto it and listen to music, obviously that's a big bonus. But other things like social networking and integration, being able to check your updates on your social networking feed. Like the screen is so small, I don't really see how that would be helpful. I see a lot of people with an iPod Nano, as a watch, and I think that's probably the most, the smartwatch I did it again. I did, not that I'm not trying to do that, but it just, the quotations, they keep coming up. Anyway, I think the iPod Nano as a smartwatch is the most practical because it's a, you have iTunes integration, so it's really the simplest if you think about it. Because, like I said, for me a smartwatch, it would be, time, weather, music, and iPod Nano probably does great at all of that. So, um, is your husband intimidated by your vast knowledge of NBA stats? Do you get aggressive when watching the games? I can see you sending him to fetch you a beer. Well, I do like beer. Yeah, I am. I obviously I don't drink a lot of beer. I'm a lightweight, so I get like the little bitty cans of Coors Light and drink like half of it. But I like beer. No, he's not intimidated. He actually loves it. He loves the fact that I like sports. Because a lot of husbands or guys wish that their girlfriend or their wife would watch the game with them or something, and they would rather not. So it's probably a lot easier for him rather than trying to convince me, please let me watch the game. Like, I'm actually the one that wants to watch it. So I don't think he's intimidated at all. Sydney, next month I'm buying my first Android phone. I'm looking at the HTC Sensation XE. What do you think of that phone, honestly? Honestly, oh, okay. No, I think it's a great phone. It's been out for a while. I think something like the HTC One X would be better if you want to go for that. I'm not sure what the price difference is in what you're looking for, but HTC One X quad-core processor, Super LCD 2 display, HD display at that, great camera. I would probably go with something like the One X, or even, maybe the One S has a dual-core processor. The Sensation XE is definitely a great phone, but I think maybe the One X might be a better phone. What do you prefer, Sid? Windows Phone or Android? I need to know right now. Wow, right now. Okay. I actually carry both. I carry a Windows Phone device and I carry an Android phone. So, there's things that I love about both. I will say that I primarily use my Windows Phone device just because I think the UI, it just really appeals to me. But in terms of functionality, there's just some things that Android does better. And so I carry an Android phone with me. And there's some things that I like the way Windows Phone does it. So I carry the Windows Phone with me. So I actually use both. But, just personally, I do like the way that Windows Phone looks. And so that's the one. I guess if I had to say one, I would pick Windows Phone. Basically, long rambling explanation for that, which is story of my life. Okay. Does Bing for Windows Phone have navigation? Mine does. I don't get why people say it doesn't. Yeah, this is. I wanna talk about this because a lot of Windows Phone users. Yeah. So this. It does have navigation, and you can enter an address, and it will give you directions. It totally has that. But whenever people say turn-by-turn navigation, they mean it'll speak it to you, like a TomTom or something, where you can say, I want to go here, set the phone down, drive, and it'll keep up with where you are. It'll tell you what to do next. It's just automatic. It'll speak all the directions to you. With Windows Phone, it'll give you the directions in a list that you have to read, and then you have to manually press, okay, I've done that step, move on to the next step, and then it'll speak it to you. And then you manually have to say, okay, I've done that step, go to the next step, and then it'll speak it to you. You have to do that every single time. It's not automatic. So that's what people mean when they say that Windows Phone doesn't have turn-by-turn navigation. It'll give you directions. It's just not automatic. How much would you pay to see Aaron shave his head? Probably not much. I don't think Aaron would look good with I don't think he would look good bald. Sydney, what's your favorite car? Mazda 6. I love Mazdas. I really do. Okay, it's 5 o'clock, which means it's time to go. But thanks, guys, for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. If I missed your question, I'm really sorry. You can send me a message on Twitter at phonedog_Sydney. If you're watching on YouTube, again, leave your comment. I read those, and I'll try to answer them if I can. But I think that's pretty much it. I just realized that I did not check Facebook once after that initial question that I read, but that's okay. I always forget about Facebook. You guys are like the outcasts. You're just kind of there, and I look at you whenever I want to. You're like the child that I never really wanted, that I just had. Anyway, okay, so, but that's it. I'll see you guys next Friday, same time, same place, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll have a great show then. But I'll see you guys later. Bye.